We are, it is.
You can wait if you wish.
7 o'clock. Almost 7 o'clock. So I think it is now 7
It is 7 o'clock.
o'clock. So welcome to this meeting of the Waverley Audit and Risk Committee. I am Councillor Julian Spence and Chair of the committee. And we are today supported by a number of the officers. In a moment, I'll just ask you just to introduce yourselves to anyone on screen. We're also going to be joined by partners from Grant Thornton, and I see Matt Dean is online as well. They are our external auditors. Members and officers, I think we've got a quite a full agenda, so I'll ask you to be brief. Also, could I ask you please also speak clearly, largely selfishly because I can't hear very well, but it will help those listening in as well. If you wish to speak, can you please raise your hand? As I said, keep your points succinct and brief. This meeting is being webcast, and if there is an interruption, we'll have to adjourn until the connection is re-established. So with that, can I just briefly ask the officers around just introduce yourselves?
Thank you, Chair. Michelle Tapping, Borough Solicitor and Deputy Managing Officer.
Kimberly Soane, Regulatory and Review Advisor.
Iona Bond, I'm your Internal Audit Manager from Southern Internal Audit Partnership.
Gillian Carson-Jones, Deputy Borough Solicitor of Zerding.
I'm Richard Bates, the Strategic Director of Finance and Resources, Section 151 Officer for Guildford and Waverley.
Candice Keat, Financial Services Manager.
Meveson Wazukwe, Outgoing Financial Services Manager.
I am Luke Harvey, Corporate Strategy and Performance Manager, Guildford Borough Council. I'm here to support Grace on this item.
Thank you.
Grace DaCosta, Graduate Management Trainee, currently working in the Business Transformation Team, Waverley.
Christine Alsasser, Interim Dam Services Officer.
Thank you very much. And do we have any officers online?
Deborah Upton.
Well, I don't think so. Oh, Deborah, hello.
Hello, Chair. I'm Deborah Upton. I work for Susan Sale, doing governance work.
Thank you.
We've also got the two other Grant Thornton members have just joined, so AJ and Devadza.
Okay, I think we'll I'll ask the Grant Thornton people to introduce themselves when we get to their item. So if we move then to the agenda itself, do we have any apologies for absence?
We haven't had any apologies actually received. However, I have noted that Councillor Zoe Barker-Manax is not in attendance, so I will make the presumption that she is attending.
Thank you. And then moving to item 2, which are the minutes of the meeting held on the 17th of June and the extraordinary meeting held on the 8th of July. Do we have any questions from members on those minutes? Councillor Higgins.
I think it's just a typo. It's on page 1, 7423. I think it's supposed to be 2026, June 2026, but it's,
Oh, thank you.
I think that's fine.
With that amendment, can we confirm those minutes as being an accurate record? Agreed. Thank you, councillors. Then on to the disclosure of interests.
None received, Chair. However, I believe that Councillor Higgins has a.
Yes.
Yeah, just for the sake of transparency, as per my register of interest, I'm a law firm that specialises in debt recovery. So when it comes to the item on debt collection policy, I thought I'd just raise that.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Any other declarations from councillors? No. Thank you. Questions from by members of the public?
None received, Chair.
Thank you. Item 5, question from members.
No.
Thank you. So that takes us to agenda item 6, which is the progress report on our audit, which I think is going to be given by the members from Grant Thornton, and we are asked to note their report. Matt and AJ, I see you both on the screen. Would you just like to introduce yourselves first, please?
Yeah, thank you for that, Chair. So I'm Matt Dean. I'm the audit engagement lead for the 22-23 accounts.
Thank you, Chair. I'm AJ Chair. I'm the audit manager for 22-23 accounts.
Good. Now we've received the progress report. Do you wish to summarise the report or?
I'll just give a brief summary, Chair. So I think the first things first is just to sort of flag that the eagle eye will have spotted from page 15 of the pack that there is a change of personnel for 23-24. So my colleague Ade will be taking over as the engagement lead for 23-24, and hopefully that will carry on in years beyond that. And Tafadzwa is taking over from AJ as the manager for 23-24. So that's just flagged then. Obviously, you'll see those at the audit committees go forward, and rest assured we'll have sufficient handover to make sure that things carry on in a smooth and unchanged manner. I think page 16 was just briefly sort of talk through where things are in terms of 22-23 and then 23-24. So members will remember I was at the committee in March with the as it stood then, the draft audit findings report and the auditor's annual report. We are, I guess, still finalising our internal procedures on the 22-23 accounts, and we'll look to finalise that by the end of September. I think, as I said at the meeting in March, the sign off of the accounts was, I guess, dependent on the ongoing internal investigation that was in progress at the time, and I think I said back then that we would look to take a view as we moved towards September onwards in terms of where things were, I guess, both in terms of the investigation and where any sort of backstop date for 22-23 would appear. I guess today we now have clarity in terms of the backstop date, in the sense that the statutory instrument for the next 5 years has been laid in Parliament today. So that gives us clarity that, subject to any changes in that process, that we will need to finish the 22-23 accounts by the 13th of December. That's the latest we can finish, as we're keen to avoid the backstop. We see no need to fall into that camp, given the work is largely done. So I guess what that means in terms of the audit sign-off for 22-23 is we're probably bringing forward, I guess, our discussions internally around the potential impact of that investigation on Waverley's accounts. Now, obviously, clearly, the challenges have been somewhat laid at the neighbouring authorities' accounts, but internally we need to understand and manage whether there's any risk of such an issue permeating in the Waverley accounts. As I said at the March meeting, we've not seen any evidence of that so far. However, because of the nature and the sensitivity of the issue, it's not solely my decision as to whether we sign that off. It has to be signed off by the partner above me in London and colleagues in our audit quality team. So in terms of update on that, I've got a meeting for later in the week where we're having that and a conversation between said individuals to work out what, if anything else, needs to happen to enable me to sign that opinion ahead of that backstop date, and hopefully sooner if possible. So I'll be in touch with the finance team if we need anything additional to try and square that off in the next week or so. So hopefully we can try and move that forward by the end of September, as we put there in terms of the report. So I think we're confident those dates will be achieved, unless something appears that I guess we don't expect, which hopefully it won't, but that's the commitment we're hoping to be in place by the end of September. I guess obviously we've got an eye on 23-24 as well. That's also on that page. So we've agreed with management and the finance team that we will start the planning for 23-24 towards the end of September, and then the final accounts visit will take place between October and December 2024. The 23-24 accounts would have to be signed off by the end of February 25 under the dates that have been confirmed in the SI today. So we're confident again that we'll be well in front of those dates, and hopefully, depending on where we get with the investigation, if we're comfortable with it for 22-23, then we should be in a similar place for 23-24. So I guess that was all I wanted to summarise from that report. Of course, happy to take any questions members may have.
Thank you. Members, any questions for Grant Thornton? Councillor?
Yeah, just as far, the investigation, have you resulted in any additional costs for Waverley Borough Council and audit fees?
So it hasn't at the moment because we haven't engaged anything further so far. There depends in terms of that internal investigation whether what scale of any follow-up might be. If it's reasonably succinct, then we may well be able to catch it within the scale fee. If there was any additional fee, it would be a relatively small number, hopefully, given we're hopeful that the issue is contained to the other authority, but I guess I can't say definitively at this stage, but I'd be expecting to keep any additional cost to an absolute minimum.
And as this is really there, your proposal for the audit will be £1,009,412. How does that compare to the current year?
So the 23-24 fee is a considerable increase from the prior year. That is a sector-wide increase because the 23-24 audit is the first audit under the new PSA contract. And in simplistic terms, as part of that process, the PSAA have reset the scale fees. Basically the fee prior to this was from 18-19. So to reflect the fact that a range of things have moved in that period, there's been a considerable increase. And this is literally everybody in the country which falls under the PSAA framework has had the same percentage increase. There are details on the PSA website around which explain it in simplistic terms. It's 151% increase to reflect changes in standards and where the market feels the value should be of that work. So it will be a considerable increase, but that is an increase that has been consistent across all of the bodies. So, and if you were to look at your neighbours in Surrey, they would each have a similar percentage. The percentage increase should be pretty much consistent across the board.
Yes, thank you. I too noted the fee increase, but as you say, that's really part of the resolving the overall backlog issue, isn't it? So whilst I think both eyebrows rose quite significantly at the increase there, I think it's understandable and one we just have to consume. And if I'm correct, it's been put into the accounts.
It was, yes, Chair.
How's that one? Any other questions for Grant Thornton? I have one just for you, Matt. You mentioned, as you said back in March, you had said that in terms of the investigation, you hadn't seen anything that was impacting the Waverley as such. Now you're saying you've also got to get clearance, as it were, from your partner and perhaps your internal audit people. From your perspective, are you going to them with that same view?
No, I mean, my view hasn't changed in any way from what we've seen so far. I think, it's one of those risk management procedures, to be honest, within the firm. I think if it wasn't for the shared directors and those kind of things, I think we wouldn't even be having the conversation. It's one of those where the firm obviously just wants to understand, and we don't want, I guess the last thing we want to do is sign something off and then something appear that we weren't aware of. Really, as I say, I'm not, from what I've seen, I'm not aware of anything, and I would be reasonably hopeful that I guess we wouldn't find anything given what I understand around the issue itself. But I guess, we just have to be able to square that circle to make sure that we're comfortable with that. But yeah, my view hasn't changed from the petition in March at this stage.
And if, I mean, I think in the unlikely event that there was an obstacle, would that, do you think, hinder hitting the backlog date? Mid-December?
I guess
It's hypothetical, I know.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to say, I guess, I suppose if we were to find something, I suppose then there's a question around scale and does it, does it then, is it, because if it's in line with, I guess, what's being found on the other side, then it may well do. But I think what I would say is if something like that, if it did appear, then there are clear, there are overrides in the statutory instrument that would allow us to proceed and fulfill the work whilst not effectively being backstopped. I guess, none of us want to drag on beyond that, but if something did occur, the SI would allow us to take our normal course. If that took us beyond December the 13th, in that case, it would be fine, because it's one of those, there are things within that SI that allow the auditor, should the need arise, to go beyond it. It would have to explain really clearly why we are, but I guess if it did, there is scope for it to happen. I guess I'm hoping if we don't, if nothing arises, then there'd be no risk. Ultimately, I guess if we did find something, I think we'd have to come back to you and say, well, look, this is what we're looking for, because obviously you as an authority would want to understand the scale of it as well. So yeah, as it stands, I'm hoping we won't be in that place. I said, if there's ever an instance that we think we might be in that case, then obviously we'd let you and management know as soon as possible.
Thank you. Councillor Gale.
Yeah, excuse my ignorance on all these things. But you say there's an investigation, you're looking for something, and you've been looking for it for quite some time. What are you trying to find? Is there a time limit on how long you have to look for, or why is it taking so long? Is there a process you have to go through?
So I think, the reason I suppose we're taking the time, I guess, is I suppose it's were the investigation to complete, and obviously, and that would obviously be at a level that was considerably more detailed than we would normally go through from an audit process. That would obviously mitigate the need for us to do any, sort of follow-up work, for once it were. So if the investigation came out and goes, we've looked at X, Y, Z, we've done a detailed review of all, any potential transactions undertaken by said individuals that could be in the accounts, that would then mitigate the need for us to do, our own checks, and that's the kind of work I'd be saying. So I suppose what we're trying to do is trying to allow the passage of time to kind of effectively mitigate the need for us to do the work. I guess now we've got that sort of December the 13th date effectively going to be put into law. I guess what we're now saying is, because that date is appearing very quickly, we will then go, rather than waiting to wait for the results of the investigation, we will then perhaps we'll then bring that potential work forward ourselves to try and bring that to a close sooner rather than later. So in a way, it was trying to allow the process to take its course in a way to go, well, actually, if that happens, then that almost negates the need, would have negated the need for us to do a huge amount around it. So that's the reason for the passage of time, really, is to allow that to take its course. If at this stage, given we have some clarity, we will now sort of expedite our work, so that if we're of the view that we don't think we're going to get that by the 13th of December, then we will then move with that doing our own work to get assurance over it. So that was the reason we were using the passage of time to try and allow the investigation to take its course.
Yeah, I can sorry, I can see that you're doing that, but you could actually hit a spot where, to beat the December deadline, you're just going to have to go for it anyway, as they say.
and that's effectively what we're saying in that update, in a sense, is because of that. That's why I said we've kind of moved that forward now. So that's why I've got the discussion this week to try and bring that to a close sooner rather than later. Because actually, there was a thought that date may be, the date that's now sort of the 13th of December. There was, for a long time, it was thought it was going to be the end of January or the end of February, and it was kind of, actually, that's a reasonable amount of time for a process to happen. But obviously now that date's been brought forward, I say that's why we're expediting that work to come to our own view, hopefully in advance of that backstop date. So yeah, no, we completely are. That's why I've got the conversations internally this week. So because the time is now becoming very finite, so hence why we're taking the action we are.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Could I ask officers, when you hear, as I hope you will, from Grant Thornton about this issue, that perhaps you could just advise the committee.
Of course,
hopefully in the next week or so. That would put our minds at rest, I think, on that. Thank you.
Sorry, one more question. One more question on that. Because of the time that this has taken, Grant Thornton have obviously had to keep our books open, for want of a better word. So is that actually incurring any more cost? Because obviously if people are still working longer and longer than they should be on our accounts, is that costing more?
I think that's I would ask either Grant Thornton or Richard if you could.
Because of this investigation, are we being charged more money?
So from our perspective, we're not. I mean, I'm certainly not charging you for the time we're waiting. I say ultimately the whole point from our side, I guess, was if we waited and it was settled, obviously that would keep our work to an absolute minimum. That was our desire to do that, really. So yeah, certainly you're not on the clock for the fact that we've been sitting waiting for this to happen for a period of time. That that's not time we're charging the client, certainly.
But there is more work involved because of it.
There will be a small amount, but as I said, hopefully we will look to keep that to an absolute minimum. And obviously there's a fee process at the end of it that I think we've touched on previously. We'll need to go through, but I think we are keen to try and keep this to as low a number as possible. I say, and that's, I guess, yeah. I'm hopeful if we get a very succinct set of work that comes out of it, then we can keep any fee variation within the bounds of what we've discussed already. So yeah, it's not, there's not excessive fees coming out of this because of the length of time that's gone through.
Will that fee variation come to this committee?
I mean, I can't speak entirely for your process, but it should do. We will obviously share that with officers before and it has to be approved by yourself before it can even go to PSAA.
Yeah, I think we should know if it's costs.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, we have to be open and transparent with fees anyway. So the minute there's anything like that, we would have to report it to you as a committee anyway. So yeah, absolutely, we can make sure you see that and see that when we're in that position.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I was just before you sign off on this particular one. I would commend to members that sectoral update that they've enclosed. I think there's a lot of good insights that we should all read. You also had there in there a general lessons learned from recent audits. Are there any specific insights for Waverley that you would point us towards?
Just trying to just get into that. I mean, I think nothing specific for yourselves. I mean, I think and lots of those questions that we certainly on that page, I think it's page 21 of the pack, I guess, would probably apply to most authorities, really. So I think, we've generally been quite robust in terms of the audit process, and the auditor's annual report, which came to the March committee, I think was a reasonably clean bill of health, really. So I think it's, I guess the key, my message generally for any authority at the moment is, I think, just not making sure you're not resting on your laurels, really, I guess, but from an accounts prep perspective, along with financial perspective, I think, obviously with the new government, I guess there's a view as to where they may go with things. I think, there's early signs in terms of certainly moving to longer term funding settlements and those kind of things. I think, hopefully feels like a positive, but I think there are a number of challenges in there, I guess more broadly, and how solving those challenges overnight probably is not going to be a work of 5 minutes, really. So I mean, I think there's no specific areas for yourselves, I say, other than sort of the points we've sort of drawn out in sort of the auditor's annual report. But I think to me, my main point would be just making sure that you're keeping your checks and balances robust. You're doing timely reporting and those kind of things, so that you're best placed to deal should any challenge occur. Really, but I think as an authority, you're certainly reasonably well placed in terms of the financial standing and those kind of things. But I think it's as you'll have you don't have to look too far in the sector to see that places which have been relatively well managed financially are starting to find it a challenge at the moment. So yeah, so no specifics, but of course if any members have any questions on that, then do let us know. We can obviously come back outside of the committee.
Okay, Matt, thank you very much. Not having any other questions from it, can I ask the committee to note the report from Grantham?
Noted.
Thank you. Thank you. So that takes us on to the draft statement of accounts. Mavis and Richard, you wish to?
Extremely briefly, Chairman. So statement of accounts was published on the website on the 23rd of August and is now open to public inspection. I think my thanks go to Mavis and Davis and the team, because this year has been a bit of a battle trying to get things like valuation data out, which obviously has delayed things, but a huge amount of work that goes into it each year. And I hope you will see in front of you a real good quality set of accounts. Obviously, any feedback on anything you notice in there, please let us have it, because obviously, as well as being up for public inspection, useful to have anything that anybody else spots as well, because sometimes we do miss the obvious.
So I think it's probably important for the committee to take what Richard's saying there. Any observations or comments to him, we're asked to note the report. We're not at this point approving it. We only approve it when it is audited.
Absolutely, yes. So these are unaudited.
That's a distinction that we probably need to make quite clear to people. Councillor Beaver.
When's the closing date for public viewing?
Sorry?
When's the closing date for public?
It's 30 days from publication, so it'll be about 22nd of September.
No doubt there's somebody commenting on
Not yet.
it. Not yet.
Good. Thank you mentioned Mavis there. Is this the appropriate moment to thank Mavis for her hard work and diligence on the accounts, and indeed on the AGS, which we're about to talk to. For members who are unaware, Mavis is sadly leaving us, and in fact, I think this is her last meeting at Waverley. So we wish you all the best, Mavis, and thank you.
Thank you, Sam.
But we are in good hands, because I think Candice is taking on the responsibilities, and I think many of us have met Candice and know her from previous activities. So thank you. So can I ask the committee to note the publication of the unaudited statements of accounts for 23 to 24?
Yeah.
Thank you. So agenda item 8 is the draft annual governance statement. This is again for 23 to 24, which will go into the accounts. And we are being asked to approve the draft that's in front of us. Mavis, are you going to outline this one?
Yes, please. So this year we have produced the annual governance statement for 23-24. Looking back at the governance arrangements where actually at Waverley Council during that period. On producing this annual governance statement, Finance, the Section 151 officer collaborated with the monitoring officer for Waverley Borough Council, as well as the assistant director responsible for risk management. There are certain aspects that had to do with HR, and the HR manager was asked to come in to the committee to present those sections. We have presented this AGS at every audit and risk committee since November, and we have had various amendments that have all been incorporated into this AGS. We think it's a good reflection of what took place 23-24, and so we would recommend the committee to approve it. Thank you.
Thank you. Members will be aware we have seen this draft at previous meetings, and we are asked to sort of constantly give our observations and comments on it. So although we're approving it now, it's effectively almost a living document that we look at every meeting. Members, any questions? Councillor Davison.
Just a small, I think it's a small typo on page 45. Is that 2004? Should that be something different?
Page 40.
Page 45 in the pack. But I got a follow-on question, if I may. I got two questions. If you could indulge me, Chairman. We talked, I had actually noted it before we actually had our meeting today, but the risk management in terms of other governance issues arising, we've been absent in having a review of that through most of 23 and into this year. It may be being a little bit overworking of it, but I was wondering whether it might be helpful to put in a paragraph at the end of 5.4 to say that this is being worked on, and as we noted earlier on in our pre-meeting, that we are very pleased that progress which has been delivered. But if I may, the question I've got at the end, I'm still very confused as to the exact process associated with this. It gets signed off by the chief executive and the leader. When? And do we recommend the AGS to be signed off now, or sometime in the future? Or when? And when does it get published on our website?
So the process for sign off is when the committee approves. It then goes to the chief executive and the leader to sign it off. And once they've signed it off, it will be uploaded onto the website.
When are we expected to approve it by? Today?
Today.
With these two small points which I've raised.
Yes, we will. We will be happy to take on the paragraph.
Yeah, I'm the 2000.
Yes, I'm on page 45. I haven't seen it yet, so.
Yeah, it's right at the top, the final quarter of 2004.
That's it. The final quarter of 2000. Oh, okay.
It's easily missed. Thanks.
Thank you.
So we are approving it. Are we then,
We're
Mr. Chairman?
asked to approve it. We obviously don't have to approve it, but it would be desirable if we are happy that we were to approve it. So although it looks like, you know, you've got the leader of the council and the joint chief executive will actually sign it. But the fact that it's come before us, my understanding is that they are happy with this document. They're commending it to us.
Yes, they have seen drafts of it, Chairman. So yes, with those small tweaks which we agreed over the past few weeks, then I'm sure they'll have no problem whatsoever.
Yeah. I would say it's looking very nice now, much better than what it earlier got.
So the representations in here are ones that the chief executive and the leader of the council are comfortable with. Councillor Davison, you mentioned risk management. I think that's a valid point that you've just made. I know that we have made changes in this document from the way it was described last year. Particularly, I think it was page number on page 48, where it now says the audit committee will continue to review the governance arrangements, including the register, ensure they are fit for purpose. I think we also have the internal audit section on page 49. And I've got we haven't as yet agreed or noted the internal audit report, but I think Councillor Davison's comments there, we should have some reference to acknowledging the progress that risk management is a work in progress, and that we've seen steps during this year to improve. That would be a good one.
Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, Chair, can I just add one point? It's mainly for Mavis and for Richard. Our committee is to approve this document tonight. But again, I'm just referring back to page 49 in the past, section 12 on internal audit. You haven't actually got the internal audit opinion for the year in there at the moment, so that section's not complete.
Yes, but once that's approved tonight, we'll put that in there. Yes.
So, is the committee happy to approve this statement on the understanding that there will be those statements, or would the committee like to see those statements before approving? I guess we can do an approval by email if appropriate.
Well, Chair, if you do the approval today, subject to those amendments,
Okay.
that should be sufficient.
I trust our office.
Yeah. Okay. Well, may I then ask the committee to approve the AGS with the amendments as requested by Councillor Davis?
Yeah, agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Which takes us on indeed to Iona and the internal audit annual report. On that, I think, I'm sure Iona, you will highlight the obvious inconsistency in the papers that we have, just in case any member has not noticed.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I shall take you through this as quickly as it's feasible. Just to note the cover paper on page 51, paragraph 1.2. It's saying that the internal audit opinion for the year is reasonable. That's obviously incorrect. Unfortunately, it wasn't the updated paper that was the cover paper that was submitted. And obviously the report shows that the opinion for the year is limited. So that's the first correction for you. In terms of the document, just in general terms, the report's prepared and presented in line with the requirements of the public sector internal audit standards. The report is for you as a committee to approve, and it sets out the summary of the work undertaken by internal audit during the 23-24 year, and provides the overall internal audit opinion for that year. And just to reiterate, it is solely opinion for 23-24. And I'll see in section 12 of the annual governance statement that you've just reviewed. It is one of the key assurances used by management in forming that underpinning that annual governance statement. I'll take you through just the key points in the document. I'll take it, that you've all had time to consider the document as a whole. Page 59 of your pack, internal audit coverage. Just a statement there. Although we were able to complete the plan during the course of the year, as reported in this annual report, there were significant delays at various points through the course of the year due to staff availability within the council. So that did impact on not so much the delivery, but the timeliness of the delivery of the audit reports, and then the resulting implementation of any agreed management actions. Section 4 on page 60 is the opinion. And it's just to reiterate, I have just gone through the opinion for the 23-24 year is limited for the council's framework of risk management, control and governance. But again, to stress that, you know, through the work, there are receipts through the course of the year for each audit. There are a number of management actions that have been agreed, and officers are working to implement all of those actions, and we follow them up and report to yourself the progress through the progress reports that come to this committee. Section 5 on coverage. 9 out of 22 systems that we covered this year have resulted in a limited assurance opinion. And due to the nature of those systems and the key findings within, they are the contributing factor to the overall limited assurance opinion for the year. If I take you now to page 62, this is where we have the paragraphs on control, risk management and governance. On page 61, page 62, under the governance section. So we've reviewed, you know, a number of the audits that we've looked at cover various elements of governance. We had intended through 4 to do a review of the annual governance statement that has been presented to yourself. Due to circumstances, we weren't able to do that, but we did send a note to management regarding some concerns with some of the content of their annual governance statement, which was primarily in and around risk management, which as a subject for Waverley for 23-24 has been discussed quite comprehensively through this committee. So in terms of risk management, again, our summary on page 62, again, probably not of a surprise to yourselves what we're saying there. You know, we reviewed risk management in 22-23 for Waverley. It resulted in a limited assurance opinion. Quite a significant number of management actions arose from that. However, up until recently, we haven't been able to do any action tracking on those because there was a lengthy lead-in time for various reasons for the implementation of those management actions. By way of a verbal update, we've now been able to do some action tracking, and the vast majority of those management actions have been implemented, which you'll see in the progress report. But again, touching on just following on some conversations that we just had in terms of the Audit and Risk Committee's responsibilities for risk management, we do just question how, due to the absence of any strategic risk registers coming to you as a committee during the course of this year, question whether what has come to you has been sufficient to enable you as a committee to effectively discharge your responsibilities in relation to risk management. And then from pages 62 on to about 68, under the control section, we have just provided a summary for you all for those audits that resulted in the limited assurance opinion. You will probably recall that Property Terrier itself did come to you with greater detail at the last audit committee in the progress report, but I don't think as a committee, you've seen prior to this report, sight of the synopsis for the other areas that fell into limited assurance opinions. And then again, page 69, management actions, as you're all aware, we track the implementation of those and report that back to yourselves through the progress reports that come. Page 72 are KPIs are set out there for reference, and we've achieved those KPIs for the year. And then page 72, the last section, acknowledgement. It has been a very difficult year for officers and staff at the council. You know, a lot of staff turnover, changes in responsibility, etc., etc. That said, staff have been engaged in the audit process, and we'd just like to extend our thanks to everybody involved with the internal audit process through the course of the year, because we wouldn't have been able to do the work and report to you accordingly if we hadn't had that engagement. And even for those systems that are limited, or in particular for those systems that are limited, management are fully engaged and on board with the management actions to address those weaknesses and see them through to fruition. Any question?
Well done.
Thank you. Yeah, members of the committee, any questions for Ida? Councillor Billy.
Yeah. There's quite a few inconsistencies, aren't there, in what you found in general. I don't go into any detail because we went past it. Have these been going on for some time, or is it the fact that have things fallen away? From your view, things have fallen away and we're bringing less consistent from the high staff turnover? I mean, it seems rather bleak.
It's difficult to draw that parallel,
Yeah.
because I think it's a combination of factors. A number of these areas haven't been looked at in depth for a number of years by internal audit. And again, some of the areas where we have had some coverage previously, it hasn't been to the depth that it has been this year. But we've taken the opportunity to rebalance the plan. It is focusing more on those areas of concern, high risk, and going into more depth. So I'd like to think it's more just they haven't been subject to routine audits of depth for a number of years, which is why these inconsistencies are coming to light. I don't think within any of the individual systems, those inconsistencies or non-compliances are particularly onerous for the council to address. But yes, I probably staff turnover has been a contributing factor as well.
Councillor Davison.
I may be over exaggerating in my mind a concern. So probably my first not addressed to you, but to you, Richard. There appears to be, from the internal audit analysis, a distinct sort of silo mentality in the organisation. One group not talking to another group. I was looking at on the NNDDR, on the debt recovery. One part knows what's going on, but not recording and telling other people what's going on. And also on the antisocial behaviour, one group taking a note of it, but not passing that on or linking into other parts of the organisation. So I'm just wondering, as we go through our business transformation work, most of which targets or tries to target, from my own bitter experience in the past, removal of silos. Is Is this something which is being looked at more widely within our organisation? Because I think, you know, if you've got little pockets, not talking to other pockets, or bits of documents not being filed so that other people can look at them appropriately, we can get ourselves into somewhat of a muddle organisationally and internally. Is this something which is concerning your management team?
I think it's something, Chairman, which I think in a lot of organisations you have that sort of silo mentality. I think we're trying very, very hard now with the new chief executive in place and joint leadership team working very hard to actually sort of, we've had away days and bits and pieces to just enhance how we work together and understand better, you know, each other and each other's services. So I think it's work in progress. I think it's something which is quite difficult to actually sort of break down some of those barriers, but we are trying the best we can to make ourselves a joined up organisation.
Okay, it's work in progress. If I may continue, Chairman, it would be nice to get an update back 6 months hence or 9 months hence as to how well you are progressing, or whether you're hitting roadblocks in trying to address those issues, which will be raised by internal audit. Progress, I think, would be nice to see.
Yeah, well, very much agree. And you know, we've had a real focus over the last month or so, trying to get things like the management actions out of the way. Some of those have been outstanding at both councils for quite considerable time. So I think that the focus on both risk management, but also on the audit side of things, is now being upped in terms of its importance. And I think that's something we just need to maintain. So I'd hope that Iona would agree that there's been a noticeable change over the last few months.
Yes, definitely.
Thank you.
Councillor Gale.
Yes, we're talking about people speaking to each other and working together. I think working from home causes a lot of problems because people are not in the room to chat through something with somebody, rather than have to organise a phone call or a Zoom meeting or something. I don't think it works very well working from home personally. I think people are much more engaged with each other when they are all under a roof and they work together and they can communicate with each other and they can feed off of each other. I think that's a much better way to work, but that's my own personal opinion. And I know these days everybody thinks you have to work from home, even if you do go and get your washing in off the line halfway through a meeting, but that's beside the point. But no, that sort of thing I don't think is conducive to good working. I just don't. I don't know if Iona thinks working from home isolates people.
I am complete polar opposite to your point.
Are you?
Yeah, yeah.
Good.
I think the overall benefits of home working far outweigh in terms of productivity the negatives. Really? Yeah. And if you look at some of the issues in this audit report, it's not necessarily about people communicating face to face. It's about updating an online electronic system anyway, and that's good practice whether you're sat in an office with people or sat remotely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Councillor Higgins. First of all, Iona, thank you very much for the report. It's reassuring to see how in depth you've gone into in terms of looking across the whole council. It's extremely helpful. Obviously, the outcome's not great, and it really does, I think, emphasise how important audit risk is to the council. It's there to protect us, because when we haven't got strong processes and systems in place, it's quite clear it costs us money. You know, we've seen throughout the report examples where, you know, there's been inconsistency in charging, inconsistency in terms of chasing debt, and significant write-offs. I've got two elements. First question really to you, Iona, is how strong are our systems? Or, you know, are we too reliant on people making decisions, or should we have more systems in place to almost prevent human error?
That's probably not a question that can be, I mean, a very good question, but probably not an easy answer question. I don't think from from the work that we've done, although within each individual review we've done, I think it's more the compliance with the framework of control that's fallen down, rather than the framework of control itself is incomplete or has got significant weaknesses or gaps in it. I think there will always be the ability for human error, no matter what checks and balances you put in place. I think you need to be pragmatic, particularly in the current environment, about the cost of control and being over-controlled. I think this last year there was a number of other factors that have probably come into play. That's going back to the previous councillor's questions that have come into play that have contributed towards that non-compliance. And that's troops on the ground, which I know the council is working very hard to try and resolve, both in terms of numbers and just general staff turnover. I think if that level of stability is achieved, that will naturally reduce the level of non-compliance against the control processes.
I think because when I was just going through certain aspects, I'm not going to go into every single one, but my thoughts just return to, well, it must be a technological solution here in terms of putting belts and braces and protections in place. So, for example, someone wants charging, for example, well, that should just be a default system thing. That shouldn't just be someone going, oh, well, we'll charge this or we'll charge that. Someone who wants to write off, surely, but they might process that write-off, but it obviously must escalate up to someone automatically. So are those processes in place or not in your experience?
So in terms of, I'd have to go back to the individual audits and the working papers to establish where in each of these systems particular that it is an automated rather than a manual control. Anywhere there are, I would say in general principle, if we're picking up that it's a manual control that's fallen down, that would be for management to then look at as part of their management response as to whether they need to look at the benefits or the practicalities of implementing an automated process, because again, that might come at an additional cost that outweighs the benefit of putting that in place.
Thank you, Iona. And my final point really is Appendix 1 sums it up perfectly. It's, so bear with me, page 73 in the pack. It's got the itemised limited findings. I would like to see those to be escalated to the corporate risk register, which we're going to discuss later, because it's really important that we get these resolved to stop any issues moving forward.
Thank you. Iona, thank you for the report. I think it's sobering reading for all of us, both on the committee and indeed officers. I don't think anyone takes any pleasure in having a limited opinion. I'm sure you didn't have pleasure in writing it. I do, however, take some comfort, and I hope I'm correct in thinking that I've heard you say that certainly in this moment now the vast majority of the things are being implemented. And as the committee, we had an informal meeting earlier today where we heard, I thought, a lot of progress, still work in progress. Am I correct in thinking that you have scheduled a further update audit to follow on from the previous risk management audit, or is that not yet in the?
It's not yet in the plan.
I would like to. I think we heard that April 25 is when the plan to have things in process. I think it would be helpful certainly before this time next year. So after that, sometime to have an update audit from you, hopefully confirming that all the things that were identified have now been attended to. With the opinions, to me, probably the more serious of the limitations. And I noted you said on the on a lot of the other limitations that you had good cooperation and that everyone was fully engaged and on board. That to me is important. It's one thing to have an audit that does something, but if you have something, officers that need to give it full due attention and expedite the remedial action. So I take some comfort from that. We heard, I think the point that it's still a silo mentality, and I think the committee would definitely like an update at some point on how that mentality is being broken down. I think we also acknowledge that, as you said, that some of the issues here are because the audits haven't been looked at in depth for some time. Therefore, there's some inconsistency. But I'd like to thank you for the report. And accordingly, ask for the committee's approval of this annual internal audit report and the opinion for 23-24.
Yes.
Thank you. I think we're staying with you and for now the progress report. We've sort of touched a little bit on that, but and the internal audit plan, although those may now I think be two separate.
They are. Yes, Chair. Just to point out to members that inadvertently there was two cover reports put in, but they were actually the same cover report. So I did email out to everybody a copy of the cover report for the internal audit progress report. And there are copies here if anybody didn't get one. Sorry, thank you.
You want to take us through first the progress report?
So the progress report, this is a report for you as a committee to note. That's probably about the only substantial difference between the two cover reports. The progress as reported in the document for you this evening is progress against the plans for Q1 and 2. Because as you recall, we've now moved on to quarterly planning for the council. So it's progress against Q1 and 2 to the end of July. So that's only just into Q2. But it also includes for action tracking purposes any audits from 22-23 and 23-24 where we're still tracking progress on implementation of any management actions. So page 82 in your pack, the performance dashboard. Again, it looks really good for this time of the year where we say there's 72% of work in progress, but obviously that's only for the first half year. But I'll sit there and go, oh, look at that, progress is really good, 72%, which to be fair is about where we should be, is on track for the end of July, but only two quarters of the plan agreed for the year. Section 4, page 83, is the analysis of live audit reviews. So this is just where we keep listing those audits that currently still have management actions that are yet to be implemented. And we highlight in numerical format any with overdue actions against them, and whether they're low, medium or high. The number at this stage of overdue management actions does appear to be quite high, but the main reason for those numbers being high at the moment is in relation to the property terrier audit review, which was undertaken and finalised November last year, where you can see that to date, although all management actions are due to have been implemented, none actually at this stage have been. And that is because of the implementation of those actions has been delayed at the moment, pending the recruitment of some managers and staff within legal. Because at the management level, they will be better placed to just review, see whether those actions are still relevant, and then take those actions forward. So you will see for those that I've listed under Annex 1 as well as Annex 2 in terms of the revised target dates for those I've got to be confirmed, because I'm just waiting confirmation of when those target dates are. I'm not unduly concerned at this stage that those actions have been delayed, because it makes sense, the reasons given for delaying those. And again, I will continue to track that progress regularly. Other than that, for some of the audits there, it's just the stragglers for management actions, which is one or two across the board, with the exception of prepaid purchasing costs and sundry debtors. But again, much higher priorities at the moment within finance, reclosing accounts, etc., etc. Again, assurances that attention will be turned to getting for these two areas, the management actions implemented. But again, in terms of numbers, you can see if we just talk about sundry debtors, there were eight actions arising in total from that review, and we're down to just the last three that need to be implemented. And having said that, I can see that there's obviously a little error in my table there, so I'm saying that all actions were high, but I'm saying that the overdue ones are medium. So I shall have a look at that and correct that and forward a corrected report to yourself, Kimberly, if I may, the forwarding on. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then Annex 1 and 2, sorry, so we've got Section 7 just mapped progress of where we're at, which is about where we'd expect to be by the end of July. Housing rents as an update, we have got scoping for that this week, and we're just about to reach out for scoping on the health and safety audit. Annex 1 sets out those overdue high actions, which are primarily, as I say, around property terrier, and then Annex 2 just gives you an even briefer summary for the medium and low actions with the initial target date and the revised target date.
Thank you. Councillor Beeman.
Yeah, this is quite very interesting. Of course, not all management actions are equal, are they? I mean, some management actions are a bit small, some maybe big. So, like in the three outstanding for the debtors, are the three big ones, or how would we specify that?
So I don't have those in front of me today. Usually those management actions where it will take a longer time, or it's a bigger issue to sort out, will have a longer target date. But in terms of direct answer to your question, I can't give you that today.
No, I don't think you could. Well, I don't understand, not every management action is the same thing.
Yeah.
Something, you just do the paper this way, and those are more fundamental, aren't they?
Yeah, and again, in the management, in the management actions, which would add strength to the weighting. Some are more important or bigger than others. They are, which is why we have the low, medium and high. So the management team, the respective management team will prioritise those management actions. And again, we review those priorities along with the proposed target implementation dates before we agree the final report. So if there's any that we feel is slightly out of kilter, then we would go back and have a further discussion with management on that.
You mentioned obviously property terrier came up quite a bit there, and we're waiting for management in place. But one of the requirements is to delete information that shouldn't be there. That doesn't require management, does it? I would have thought we're legally obligated to do that straight away. It's not for you, I know, it's just for legal, I suppose. But... So I would say that's a matter of urgency.
I too was concerned when I read this about on the property terrier, that 0 out of 18 actions completed, 9 of which were high. You've, I think, given us some of the reasons about a recruitment for on the legal side. But this report was November. That's sort of 10 months ago. So I've asked perhaps some of the officers or to give us some form of assurance that actually those actions are being addressed. We've got revised due dates here of to be confirmed, and I don't think that's very acceptable. I think we should have some knowledge of if and when they're going to be done, rather than leaving them with TPC. There's an officer who would like to
I'll
respond to that.
I will pick that up with Susan Sale when she's back on Thursday from her leave, and we'll get an answer for you for next time, or in between if we can.
Yeah, I just think that recruitment takes time, but 10 months should be adequate time to at least have recruited whatever the staff requirements are, and have set in process something a firm deadline for achieving this, because the high management actions, I'd be less concerned if there were sort of lower ones, but I think it's important we show that progress. So yes, if Susan.
So I'll just add, in terms of some assurance on the property terrier system, we're aware that there are some issues with the system, that it's not completely fit for purpose. We're currently going through a review of changing that system actually over to a SIPFA system, which will also incorporate the asset register. So I think a lot of the data problems are going to be really sifted out, and that's an active project right now. So I'll make sure that as well to link those in with the projects that we have, that we're addressing these data issues at the same time. So we're doing a lot of data cleansing, etc. So we'll make sure that this is picked up as part of that, and that will be in the next few months. So I'll link up with the asset team and legal as well, just to
and give us some assurance on
Yes.
timings. Any other observations, questions from the members? Hearing none, I then ask the committee to approve this progress report.
Chair, sorry, it's to note. It's to note.
To note, I do apologise. So if we can note this progress report.
Noted.
Thank you. Then on to the plan for the current quarter. And before you do that, just to confirm, one of the revisions we've made is going from an annual plan to a moving quarterly plan. That's correct.
Yeah. So for the first time this evening, I don't need to start with an apology, because it's the right cover paper and it says the right thing. So 1 out of 3 is not bad. The plan in front of you is just to reiterate, we changed in April this year from an annual planning process for yourself to a quarterly plan. You've already had quarter 1 and quarter 2 plan. The document in front of you this evening is proposals for the quarter 3 plan. It is a report for you as a committee to approve. And I've prepared this plan in consultation with the joint strategic directors. At the time of doing the quarter 3 plan, there was no joint strategic director in place in post. So there's not any particular coverage through this quarter directly on place. However, when we come to do the quarter 4 planning, there will be a much more comprehensive discussion in and around place to see whether there is anything of urgency or a high risk that needs to have a dominant face on the quarter 4 plan. I'm not concerned at the moment that there's any particular gaps with not having place within this quarter 3 plan. And as I say, as part of the discussions on quarter 4, we'll have a look at any extra coverage or more dominant coverage of place if that is applicable. That said, the IT Act audit that is proposed, because that will be a corporate cross-cutting, so that will cover some elements of place, but it's not, although it says here for sponsor it's place, that's only because that's where IT sits. It's not a specific place service audit review. And that's all I wish to say. Here is your plan.
Thank you, Iona. Any questions for Iona on the quarterly plan? Councillor Davidson.
So maybe being a bit pedantic here, right, Jack? Could you go a bit further in terms of information governance activity which is planned? Because I know from my own past experience, something like a records information management where you're looking at both the retention and expiry and removal of information is for any reasonable size organization is a pretty mammoth task and fraught with lots of dangers of accidental removal or unintentional keeping of documents, which then can be called on by external bodies, which may be to the embarrassment of Waverley.
So in terms of the information governance, as well as the other three audits in this document, at this stage we only have, as we've reported to yourselves, an indicative scope. So that just broadly, this is what this area may cover. When we come to actually begin planning the audit, we then sit down with the relevant either head of service, strategic director if they feel they need to be involved, as well as operational management to firm up the exact scope of the audit. So as you're right, information governance as a broad heading is a mammoth undertaking. So what we'll do, we'll look at risk profiles, what's coming out in other areas, other clients that we're auditing, what's in, because you have now got your risk register. Is there any strategic risks in and around information governance? Is there anything from our horizon scanning that's showing any other risks coming out of information governance, as for any of the other areas covered, and that will help us firm up the exact scope of that audit, because we only have a set number of days that we can use for for each of these audits.
So essentially, this is just an initial look, see where the priorities are and where you want to look at.
Yes,
Okay,
it
fine.
says, yeah.
Understand.
Thank you. Could I, not hearing any other questions, ask the committee to, this one, approve the plan for Q3 24, 25, 23, 24.
24, 25.
24, 25.
It gets very
We are
confusing.
24, I apologise. Councillors?
Yeah, approved.
Approved. Thank you very much. Councillors will have noted that item 11 and item 13 are in fact duplicates of each other. So we will move straight to item 12 and then deal with the income and debt collection policy 13. So item 12 was obviously the risk management review of the risk register. We had a briefing on risk management developments earlier, and I'd like to thank the officers for giving the members of the committee that opportunity to probably dig deeper than we can in a formal meeting like this on that, and I thank you. We have the various papers here. Grace, would you like to just briefly introduce this topic?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll just give a brief overview of the report and the papers. So the report provides an update on risk management since the committee last received an update in June. So the committee last received the update on risk management in June, and since then officers have worked at quite a pace to get the corporate risk register reviewed and a new template updated, as you see as the appendix to the report. So as part of this reviewing the corporate risk register, we've developed the corporate risk descriptions and the risk scoring and mitigations and controls for the risks. So that's been done as a process with assistant directors, strategic directors and other risk owners in quarterly meetings with them. So that's resulted in detailed mitigations and risk scorings in the new corporate risk register. The template was also undergone presentational improvements to enhance the visibility of the corporate risks and highlighting the direction of travel for those risks as well, ensuring that controls and mitigations are accurately identified, and there are timescales to those mitigations as well. And the corporate risk register, the new template went to performance and risk corporate leadership board at the end of August as well. And also since the last committee meeting in June, there's been the first meeting of the joint risk management group, which was in August. It's the risk management group now has an agreed terms of reference, and the first meeting was productive, and you'll see the minutes from that meeting in the report pack as well. So moving on to the next step. So officers will report quarterly to the audit committee with those updates that we get from the risk owners in the quarterly meetings, in line with best practice for the sector. And we're also in the development of new risk management strategy, which will recognise the centrality of risk management to effective corporate governance and leadership. And the new strategy will improve risk management within the organisation and introduce new processes and systems to ensure that is done correctly. And members of the audit committee will have received a survey for the
risk appetite, which is something that we're working on with Zurich Insurance to make sure that we've got an updated appetite for the council, and we'll be updating the audit committee in due course on any updates that we have in regards to the risk management strategy as that develops. So happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any I'm gonna say additional questions for Grace, as we had the opportunity earlier on? Councillor Davison.
Well, I know that everybody's probably got their own opinion as to where things ought to be. But one thing which will left out here, by the way, I like the way it's structured. It's much more informative than the previous way in which we've been looking at risk management on those spreadsheets, which we never follow what the hell is going on sometimes. But with CR6, failure to meet target of becoming net carbon zero by 2030 is being deemed as being red. Now, how is that impacting Waverley as a borough? I find that quite incredible to believe. If we fail to meet our 2030 target, the impact is zero. If the government fails to do something, it's maybe low. If the world doesn't do something, maybe that starts becoming high. But for Waverley itself, it cannot be anything other than small impact, to my mind. So I think this is someone jumping on a bit of a bandwagon and saying that climate change, net carbon zero is the most important thing in the world. These kind of assessments impact the way decisions are going to be made. And if you're putting it red, people are going to look very carefully at anything which impacts our net carbon zero targets, which is totally out of context to the actual value of the borough's activities. That's my own view. Yeah, and no doubt others will have different ones.
Thank you. We'll note those comments and
Councillor Higgins.
Well, just want to put on record my thanks to you, Grace, and all the officers that have worked hard on this. It's great to actually see the risk register like this, and obviously it's going to evolve over time, but it's definitely a good start. I think we obviously spoke about earlier some internal audit where a lot of things came out of that, and I mentioned I'd like to see some of those limited features on the corporate risk register. But one of the other things from that was accountability, and it's good to see there's owners under each item, but there can be sometimes a number of owners, and I think that I'm quite keen on accountability on certain aspects, who's actually checking these things. In particular, in mitigation and controls, we've got policies, and again, in the internal audit, for example, in procurement, the policy was perfectly fine, but it wasn't being adhered to. So I'll be quite keen to make sure that we're double checking that, okay, yeah, we've got those mitigations, but are they actually working? Just something to take away.
Councillor Gale.
Yeah, I agree on the red for the target zero. It's a bit extreme, isn't it? Really? I mean, yes, it would look bad if we don't do it. I think it would look bad on Wednesday if we don't reach the targets, but it's not going to be the end of the world. But in the same respect, recruitment and retention of staff, we've got marked as amber on here. Actually, I think we're in the red zone here because a lot of things came up on the internal audit about the fact that we've had a lot of changeovers of staff. We can't seem to keep staff. To me, that's more desperate than amber, but that's my own personal opinion. I don't know how you weight these things, so I think that does sort of stand out to me that it's been mentioned many times tonight about the recruitment being a problem to Waverley.
Indeed. I think members of the committee, we should be cognizant of where the line here ends for us. I think it's absolutely appropriate for us to give our views on individual assessments, but really we're here to get assurance on the process. And you know, the officers and the executive and the leadership team may have a particular view on a risk that differs from ours, but it's the process that they get to. So I think just want to clarify that. And I would again echo Councillor Higgins with, I think, commend the work that you've done here. That is, I'm now seeing real progress, which, you know, for a number of months, frankly, I was concerned that we weren't seeing any. I think, you know, what you have here is a real real work in progress. I mentioned it earlier, a couple of observations I had. One was about the lack of insurance in the controls. I think that should be addressed. And more generally, I think I've asked the officers to consider whether a planning related risks should be here in the strategic register. So I just put those out. I had one specific question for clarification. It's on page 145. There's under the implementations, review of the committee terms of reference. And it says it is anticipated an audit committee will be established as part of this process. Is that a type of a risk?
Yes, yeah, I think that's specific to Guildford, isn't it? Yeah, so it's not.
Okay, but we just want to put our minds at rest that we are already in existence. Thank you for that. Any additional questions? Councillor Denson and Councillor Bean.
I just want to further endorse what Councillor Higgins has been saying about on comments on the people accountable and responsible for any areas. My own personal preference is to have single person accountability. If they need to bring in other people, that's part of their role as the accountable person. And I would urge, if at all possible, to ensure there is one person accountable for a particular critical issue. Yeah.
Thank you. I agree on that.
Would you agree with that?
Councillor Bean.
Yeah, my comment is in relation to CR1. Interacting with the kind of property alternatives. He says the risk is most significant in waste services, parks and countryside facilities, parking and street cleaning and leisure facilities. All those are contracted out to, you know, certainly Waverley. So I know we can say that it should be the contractor's responsibility to take all these checks, shouldn't it? Rather than Waverley should be assured that the contractors are able to do these checks. Because it's a corporate risk in the amber. What are we saying about our contractors like this?
Also like to comment on.
Yeah, I'm happy to. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor, for your question. The framing of this risk is quite broad necessarily, so as it's for the corporate risk register. The council will maintain a residual liability in respect of engaging with contractors to make sure that they're fully compliant with health and safety practices and policies and procedures. That responsibility will be discharged for the contract management function. So it's important that the council has assurance, particularly large contracts such as the waste service that's outsourced, and that appropriate arrangements are in place. Clearly, those, as you say, primary responsibility will lie with the contractor. So this was quite a multifaceted risk, but yeah, I take the point that we could maybe perhaps delineate that out where there's other sources of assurance.
Well, it's a bit different in Waverley and Guildford, because Guildford do more direct requirements.
Yes, Guildford's got some of these services in-house, in which case there's a higher level of liability because Guildford provides them in-house. there will be a residual liability, even if it's outsourced, to ensure that contract, particularly, for instance, if a contractor acting on council business were to, for instance, act in a way that was unsafe, the council would have a duty to prevent that.
Thank you. I think, in my mind, that highlights perhaps a challenge for you as you develop this process, is that whilst the two councils are quite rightly looking to be as complementary as they can be in terms of, and the risks will be similar, there will be areas that are different. As we develop the Waverley risk registers, we should always be aware of that. So if you can just bear that in mind as you view your considerations. So what applies to Guildford does not always apply in Waverley and vice versa. Thank you for that. Picking up on our earlier meeting, the presentation that you showed us is going to be attached to the minutes. So I think that's important to see. We spoke also about potentially having another briefing before our November meeting on progress that's going on. So I would ask you to arrange that. Noting, I think that one of the key officer meetings is only a week before our meeting, but if you can arrange that, that'd be appreciated. So with that, I would ask the committee that we can note this updated corporate risk register, and its mitigations and risk scoring, and the development of the new risk management strategy and methodologies.
Noted.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Grace. Thank you, Lou.
Do we make reference to how we're pleased with the presentation of it?
Sorry?
Do we make reference in the minutes to how pleased we are with the presentation of how that's coming along?
Yes, we will. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I hope so. Yes,
Yeah.
and I think it's very important that people see what we
Yes.
what we heard. Yeah. That takes us to item 13, the draft income and debt collection policy. And I have Fiona's name against that.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'll be presenting on behalf of Fiona tonight.
Thank you, Nicholas.
This is the 2024-25 draft income and debt collection policy.
Sorry, Mavis, can I ask you to speak up a little for us who are hard of hearing?
Yes, please. So this is the 2024-25 draft income and debt collection policy. It was necessary for this policy to be revised because it was one of the requirements from the internal audit sundry debts report. In addition, because of the finance procedure rules that were updated on the 16th of July 2024, it was important that this policy be reviewed and everything be aligned for the council. It's a general audit requirement for Waverley Borough Council to have policies in place and to allow for revision for policy requirement, and it's also prudent for the organisation. I would refer everyone to the actual report. If you could please turn to page 182 in the pack. Please. It states the policy introduces the following improvements to the income and debt collection systems of the council. We would like enhanced debt monitoring procedures supported by a corporate debt and income officer responsible for monitoring debt across the council. We would also like a requirement to be put in place that payments be made in advance of service provision for all services where this is permitted by statute. And then also a requirement for direct debits to be set up wherever possible for regular payments due from customers. I would want to highlight this as the biggest change in this policy. Also, this policy aligns to the revised write-off process for debts as was signed off in the new finance procedure rules. It aligns to the council principles of the use of its powers, the advice the council gives, and the recovery procedures we currently use to date. It highlights the duty for every department to ensure there's effective communication when dealing with customers. The need to tell them what the bill or invoice is for, the total amount, the installments due dates for payments. And this is going to be, once this policy is adopted, this is going to be part of the training that's going to go out to every member of the organization, especially the service heads and people responsible for raising invoices and payment for services. It also addresses our current debt recovery processes and the new limits that have been introduced with a view to improving our debt write-off procedures and reducing the amount of debts that Waverley currently is writing off, and also to improve our collection rates. Officers would recommend that the council adopts and approves, the audit committee adopts and approves this revised policy. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mavis? Councillors, Councillor Beeman.
Yeah, is it common practice for the council to pay obtain payment in advance of service provision, whether it's possible and permissible? That's actually, I mean, generally in a commercial organisation, you're gonna have a 30 days or whatever to pay a bill. And why would we entitled in particular?
The reason we're asking for this in particular is because in certain instances, people have not been paying, so there's certain specific services that this would apply to. And we think that the remedy would be if they had to pay for that service upfront, then there wouldn't be a case of we having to write off the debts because we can no longer trace the service users.
Is that quite common then?
Yeah, it is, and I'd add that is actually it's current procedure at Waverley anyway. So anytime we raise an invoice, the payment is due immediately. And that has been the process at Waverley. This isn't actually a change, it's just putting it into documents that's what everyone should be following. That's local government because of the types of services we're selling. It's often the case that you are expected to pay before you get the service, just purely because of what we're doing in terms of discretionary services.
Councillor Higgins.
5.1 says the council will set clear targets and timescales for recovery of debt. Where would we find those targets and timescales?
I believe it will be in consultation with the Strategic Director for Finance.
Yeah, I mean, so I'd say this is something we're working on. So this is the new financial procedure rules have come in, and debt's definitely an area that we're targeting now in terms of catching up and looking at. So I would say that's something we would expect to pull together and bring along. It's not available currently.
Yeah, I think it's important that's documented somewhere, because I mean, you will have different timescales for different types of debt. But I think it's important it's documented for people to be clear as to what they do and when they escalate it. So, then the final bit was, I'm happy to approve the policy today, but in terms of vulnerable people, I think it probably needs to be a little bit more robust in terms of making sure we probably do stop any sort of collection activity. I know it goes through, I think in between that review period, you probably want to make sure there's processes to stop any collection activity. Yeah, thank you for a report.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have a couple of one small point. 2.3 states that this policy should be reviewed annually by this committee. So could I ask that that's added to our annual work programme so that we don't forget that? Oh, and yeah, this policy will take effect from 1st of April 24. we're being asked to approve it, it should be after the date we've approved it rather than before, so I'm happy to have it from the 10th of September, if that's agreeable to users. Thank you for that. The other question on 5.3, it makes reference to the officers will use their expertise to determine which course of recovery to action. This may be to involve a third party, such as an enforcement agency. I'm not seeing in this policy anything that states how and who appoints those third party enforcers. And I would perhaps, if any officer could appoint any third party, I think that we would have concerns on that. So I think there should be some process that presumably only approved third parties are appointed, and maybe it's something that the officer that is going to be nominated here has to, it goes up to one person. So I'd like you to consider including some form of provisions for how third parties are appointed.
I can reassure the committee that there are currently processes in place. So this refers mainly to the revenue and benefits team that already have a set process and have debt recovery agents. They're actually working with another local authority that handle that part of the enforcement work. So no officer at the moment can arbitrarily appoint a party.
Yeah, I take reassurance from that, but I think it should be stated as such in the policy.
Thank you.
On that. And finally, on 6.5, who do we have a nominated officer?
Yes, we do.
And who is that, please?
It's Fiona Hardy.
Thank you. Any other questions on this? Then the recommendation, which is for the committee to approve this draft income and debt collection policy with effect from September 24 rather than April. Am I correct, officers, that we're approving it, or are we going to recommend it to council for approval? So it is for our approval. So are members happy to so approve? Approve. Thank you very much. That takes us to the current proposal work programme for the audit committee. We have this in every meeting, so it gives us a look forward as to the sort of things that we are having to do. I'm very conscious that there are more and more policies that say they require our approval, our review, and so forth. And I think we should always have those on this plan so that we are we don't miss anything.
Yeah. It will be updated with everything we've discussed today.
Okay. I also just noted under this September 24 programme, the value for money report and external audit findings report. Obviously, that's been delayed given what we heard from Grant Thornton.
Well, as you will see, because normally I rotate the months through, so because I was absent, I didn't rotate the work programme through. So please, and also like terms of reference, we're going to see today, and it's actually on the November. So I will update the work programme to reflect that.
Thank you. Members, any questions or observations on the programme? None. I'd like us to note this programme. So, thank you. Which takes us to the review of the terms of reference for this committee. And that was in the supplemental pack that we all received. Forgive me for which officer is going to. Deborah, who's online. Deborah, patiently waiting online. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this is really an update to your current terms of reference. You currently use the SIPFA good practice model, but you're using a 2018 version, and it was updated in 2022. So the suggested revised terms of reference for you are set out at Appendix 1. They are based on the SIPFA good practice of 2022, but I've also included in red those bits of your current terms of reference that on speaking to the chair and vice chair, you've indicated you would not wish to lose. So I'm hopeful that the terms of reference will represent something that members feel they can adopt. The main changes really are it's recommending that you appoint up to 2 independent members to support the work of the committee. And that position has been accepted by the majority of Surrey councils and actually councils across the country have accepted the position that it is helpful to have some independent non-voting members that support your work. And generally, you'd like to think that they can provide any skills shortages that the committee feel are relevant as well. I've put a provision in for the council not just to appoint them, but for them to actually be able to be removed if that was felt necessary by members of this committee. And the other change that I've put in as well is at the moment, this committee and the Standards Committee both recommend to Council changes to the financial procedure rules and contract procedure rules. Of course, it is much more satisfactory to have only one committee recommending changes to the Constitution. So I'm suggesting that this committee keeps them under review, but you make any recommended suggestions to the Standards and General Purposes Committee. So those are the 2 main changes, Chair. You can see at Appendix 4, I highlighted for you those bits of your current terms of reference that are being carried on by the SIPFA 2022 terms of reference. So not huge amounts of change and hopefully nothing that you would feel is too contentious. So I'm happy to take any questions on those, Chair.
Any questions for Deborah? Councillor Higgins, then Councillor Davidson.
It's not actually a question, it's actually an apology to Deborah. I ended up substituting on their Guildford and Waverley Joint Constitution Group. And I raised that I wanted to retain a part in the base. I was looking in the wrong place. It is in there, it's at 1.2, so apologies for that.
No problem.
But yeah, I mean, SIPFA recommendations of 2 independents or non-voting members, I think is a good idea. Happy to put it into the amend the Constitution. So I'm very happy and thank you to Deborah for your work on this.
Thank you. Councillor David.
Sorry, Chair, could I just point out, and this isn't a dig at you, Deborah, at all, but the terms of reference have been reviewed every year. So we're now your one will now be version 4 of that. So it has actually been, although I appreciate what you're saying about it not being totally reviewed since 22, it has actually been reviewed every year and had slight amendments made. But I'm grateful for you because obviously you know far more about terms of reference than I do.
Thank you, Kimberly. Councillor Davidson.
Thank you. Deborah, I thought that all committees could invite external members. But anyway, I think it's very good that we should have the opportunity, should we need to, as an audit committee in particular. What's the process and who appoints?
I've left, well, the process is that the council appoints, And I've left it that the council appoints on the recommendations of this committee. I haven't set out a process, but I would assume that members of the committee, when it comes to making an appointment, you obviously don't want all of you to be on any sort of interview panel, but that you might ask the chair and vice chair with perhaps with Richard or the AD for finance, if there is one for Waverley. And so that you have some level of officer and member input into the recruitment, and then for this committee as a whole to recommend the appointment. So if you're asking me, would this just be by officers recommending, then the answer is no. I would see this as being member input into that selection process, but that would be a matter for you as an audit and risk committee to consider.
That's reassuring. Thank you.
Rochelle.
Thanks. Just for the avoidance of doubt, councillor, there would also be an external advertisement process prior to that step taking place.
I mean, I can't appoint my brother.
Councillor Davis, if I could just pick up on that. A key part of when we go through this process is trying to fill up gaps. I think one of the things we will want to do is between us work out what our current skills and experiences are. That will then inform what I hope the officers will put together terms of reference or a spec for the external people. And as I say, then we or a subcommittee of us will assist in the shortlisting or interviewing, and we will then make recommendations to council. That's the way I see it, and I hope that is the way the officers and other members would see it. So it's important. Ultimately, we have people who we can work with, but who will also give us additional insights and experience.
That's important.
And as Deborah said, should it all fall apart, there will be some sort of provision for being able to remove such people. I'm sure that wouldn't be easy, and I don't anticipate doing it, but it's important to have that in mind. Any other questions or observations on these terms of reference? Hearing none, then I'm just looking to what our recommendation is. So our recommendation is to the Standards and General Purposes Committee that these revised terms of reference be recommended to the council for adoption in the constitution.
Yeah.
Approved. Thank you very much. That takes, I think, to the end of the main agenda items. Do we have any other items that need the exclusion of the press and public?
No, Chair.
Are there any other items or issues that any member of the committee would like to raise? Hearing none, I will at 9 o'clock on time. Congratulations, members and officers. Bring this meeting to a close with thanks and again, to Mavis, good luck. Thank you all very much for your time. Thank you.
Can I, outside of the meeting, can I make a small suggestion? We have items like, for example, terms of reference. It's a shame that Deborah's got to hang around.